Maria, so one of the stories of the women that were regenerating. Shall we call her Maria? So Maria was trying to give birth, but still had thoughts and feelings and wanted this child. So it's a very dark, desolate kind of night. Now it'd been raining, and all you could hear from the window was a dripping sound. So Dr. Yip closed the window. Dr. Yen started to administer the injections and the procedure. Groundwork had been done. The false paperwork, the passports, the driving license, the entering onto the NHS medical records had all been taken care of. Illegally, but very easily. They're all entered onto the system. Injecting the eggs into the womb, and going back to the home. All it needed was a little bit of help from Dr. Chen, and a birth was beginning to take place. Welcome to Aldon's Reviews and True Crime. Hello there, and I hope you're doing well, whether you're in your car, in your armchair, in your garden, or at work. So this story is based on a true story. Now this is hearsay from an old friend of mine, a work colleague of mine. I certainly didn't believe it, because this story involved people regenerating with medical help and bodies that were melting. So a fair few years ago, I was in between work, and I was working in the medical profession in the administrational side of things. And I had a work colleague, a boss of mine, who was kind of one of those very clever individuals who was climbing the ladder of success, going from his PhD and furthering himself and working alongside consultants. Now, I won't give out real names, but shall we say he was working for a consultant, a very clever consultant, called Dr. Chen. Now my colleague, so we call him Dr. Yip, he was someone that got things done. Perhaps did things with shortcuts involved, and probably would have got into trouble if somebody found out, but he got things done. On an administration side of things, he was very efficient, but he was kind of picking up the consultant trade very quickly as well. So he was going to go on, I'm sure, to take over the study from Dr. Chen. He was kind of Dr. Chen's right-hand man, and not only worked with him closely at the hospital, he also worked with him in his own time, etc. So Dr. Chen, the big consultant from China. I used to get snippets of information at first. So Dr. Chen used to work in cryogenics, and he also worked for the military, and he also got contracted by the Russian KGB and also the medical profession on the Russian side of things too. And wait for it, it is quite hard to believe, but to create people. So he found a genetic way of creating people. He could also freeze somebody for a number of years and then reawaken them. So he was a very clever man. Now this was the bits and pieces that I was skeptical about, but as it went on, it became more and more believable in what he was saying. So Dr. Yip my boss. He was in charge of the admin and also in charge of many other things up the chain as well. And I forget his exact title, but he did have a title, but he hardly ever used it because his fingers were in so many pies. I wasn't sure what exactly he was doing. He'd disappear for weeks on end somewhere. I don't know where he went, but I gather it was somewhere abroad. I thought that it was to see his family, but Dr. Chen would also go missing at the same time. Anyway, he was opening up to me and he wanted me to come on board. He needed help. I did refuse. But the more he went on, I got very tempted. So Dr. Yip and Dr. Chen, they would also work privately as well on IVF. They worked for some of the top IVF clinics around the world, really. Forgive me, my medical knowledge on this isn't very good. If I do get the terms incorrect, then forgive me. They were working with women, some of them quite wealthy and they'll go private, others who weren't so wealthy, so they needed the NHS to help them out with the IVF. They used to export from the hospital and from the private hospitals. They were a bit like birthing beds, but they were converted, so they would be all kind of waterproof. Do you know those kind of mattress? I can only report on what I saw, and I went into the room with Dr. Yip and Chen. I had to sign a few forms to say I wouldn't disclose any information about these particular beds, but apparently they were state of the art. These would be all fully waterproof. He took me into this medical room that would hold body bags, shall we say, and there was a lot of body bags in this particular room. And there was this big like bed thing with a kind of a hole in the middle like a funnel, and underneath there would be this large it's like a kind of a fish tank. And they were experimenting at the time with different sizes of this fish tank. God knows, I just thought it where soiling went perhaps, and it was a bit elaborate, I don't know. My boss explained to me that these were going out to the homes and helping the young women regenerate. So these women were actually made through cell growth. So cells would grow in a laboratory somewhere, I don't know, that's probably why they went abroad and did what they did, and they were transported in special kind of trays, whatever you call them, where body parts come in, and arrived in the laboratory. So it all had to be quite secretive. Dr. Chen had a number of people working with him, and they would go back into the bedroom and it would, I don't know, generate a person. They wouldn't need to grow, they'd kind of be fully grown already. It's really far-fetched, but he was serious when he was telling me this. Now, IVF wasn't always successful. So anyway, they would go out to homes and help shall we say normal women who were born through mother and father, etc. And they would use this as a bit of a frontage for this extra curriculum activity of producing babies from unnaturally produced women. So they would produce these babies. I don't know quite what happened after that, or what happened to the babies. He didn't say, but it kind of seemed a bit unethical. That's what I had trouble with. I don't know, where did they go? Did they go and become soldiers for the Russian army? I don't know. It's really crazy. Now, if the unnaturally produced women couldn't have babies, they'd pretty much go into an automatic meltdown. So the whole body would melt down and there would be so much heat generated. It would be like, it was like a release inside their body of acid. So all the acid would just melt everything, melt the bones and everything, and then drip down into the tanks underneath. That's why they were at the time talking about size. And I don't know how big these tanks were myself, but I only saw a small one. But I was told by Dr. Yip that the tanks were quite, I don't know, about 4 foot long by about I don't know, 2 foot wide or something. So something that would fit underneath one of these single reclining beds. The ending, if you like, or not the ending, I don't want to put a spoiler on it, but shall we say that Dr. Chen, Dr. Yip, and anyone that worked with them, they disappeared. And I did go back to where I worked at the hospital later on. No sign of them. No, I asked questions. I asked questions at the time when they disappeared when I worked there, but I didn't want to say too much because everything was stressed and it's bizarre. Really bizarre. But that's part one. Thank you for listening, watching, and don't have any silly dreams. Thank you.